All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great Lakes Permaculture Design Collaborative podcast.
I'm Milton Dixon, and I'm here with
William Faith.
And I'm Rhonda Baird.
And we've been getting together
as a teaching collaborative across 3 states.
The podcast is there to answer a lot of questions while also inspiring a deeper level of inquiry.
To bring ideas and information to people as they're exploring permaculture and implementing it.
So, welcome. GLPDC.info.
Well, welcome to the GLPDC, Great Lakes Permaculture Design Collaborative podcast. We are here today, Milton Dixon and I. We're recording some thoughts about permaculture and systems thinking and emergency preparedness in the context of the coronavirus. COVID-19 is unfolding all around us, and rather rapidly, both of our lives have been upended just a little bit when our children and spouses have been relegated to the house. So here we are used to working remotely from our house, and now, I'm sitting next to a pillow fort.
Yeah, it's a little different.
So we're sure everybody else is in a similar situation, or many of us. And there's a lot of upending happening right now, and a lot of information being shared, a lot of misinformation being shared,
a lot of fear.
Yeah. And also, if you haven't hit a bout of fatigue about it all, you might soon. So I know I have hit a little bit of that and needed to take a break.
Yeah.
So
I've been trying to distance myself generally, that I have a period of time during the day where I can figure out what news happened, and then I put it away for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's a really healthy self-care boundary to practice, right? But going outside, we're going to talk about some of this as we go through. But we're also in this place where we've seen a lot of somewhat strange behavior from people, maybe even participated in some somewhat strange behavior. And also, because permaculture is systems thinking, and because people are interested in not only systems thinking and culture change, but also thinking about the future and where all of this is going, there have been a number of opportunities for us to interact and kind of run up against different mindsets that people have. So when we see Walmart parking lot or Target parking lot or a Sam's Club parking lot totally full, or maybe we go in to get toothpaste because we need toothpaste for something, and the toilet paper is completely gone from the space and household cleaners are gone. That's a kind of fear-based mentality I think that a lot of people have, and sussing out what's practical, what's not practical.
Yeah, I think some of the responses that, especially in this early times that I've seen, has been really ineffectual or not practical. I mean, you're so worried about toilet paper that I can think of multiple other ways sufficiently that I already have at my house that I can deal without having toilet paper. It's maybe not ideal, but it's definitely not a problem. There's other things that are probably more important to focus on. In some ways, it's a distraction.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other thing, is there is this mentality of preparedness. And to be perfectly honest, the permaculture course, we talk about emergency preparedness, fire and catastrophe section. And we talk about how can we start to build our resilience. So we have the things on hand. We've made choices so that we are resilient in times of crisis. Right. So this is the other sort of leg of why we feel like we want to talk about this today. Is this is familiar to us because it's something that we do talk about and think about in permaculture design.
I'm interested too in ways that you're already resilient, that you've made your home already resilient, pre-crisis.
Right. I was thinking about this because I was talking with my mom about this morning. She lives in another state, and we were talking about how when I was very little in the 70s and early 80s, my father worked in a factory and he was laid off periodically. Even the first 6 months I was after I was born, he was laid off. And so that meant that essentially our family was in crisis for a period of time, because if you've been unemployed, you know that you're more vulnerable, right? So we learned a lot about, people being home from work or working from home and looking for work. And at the same time, I was raised on 2 acres out in the country, and a lot of my family hunted and foraged, and we gardened and we canned and we saved seed, and we did a lot of things that made us resilient. My parents built a house when I was 10. My dad designed it not because of any sort of sustainability reason, but just because it was practical for the house to be partially earth bermed, passive solar, and wood heated, because that was good design. And we had a lot of pantry space, for example. So there's a lot that from those times where the skills that I learned helped me to be resilient, and going through challenging times and learning to find humor, or to make do with what we had, or to be creative, were skill building in terms of resilience. So we did learn to make things into an adventure and just appreciate really simple things instead of depending on things. And, that was, like I said, in the late 70s through the mid 80s. Those were things that we practiced off and on. So those are some of the things that are familiar to me if I haven't had to live through those things in the same way. What about you? Where would you say some of your resilience comes in?
Not so much in my family, but focusing on skill building. I think living in the city for the time that I did really helped me kind of think beyond just my little space, because that can be really limiting. Then so to be in the city and then kind of focus on just this little apartment, you get boxed in and you get limited, and there's only so far you can go. I think for me, really skill building, opening up skills, delving into foraging, developing that skill, and developing foraging and developing fermentation, kind of that knowledge that I know what to do with things that I find. I know how to go and find things to eat if I have to. Certainly wouldn't want to. That would be a really awful position to be in. But knowing that, hey, I could go out, find something to eat, just makes my person just a whole lot calmer. Knowing that what I have isn't the end of it.
Yeah. Well, and besides, we're talking about food, which seems like rather drastic, but part of the resilience of my family is having cultivated basic herbalism skills.
Yeah, medicine.
So being able to make medicine, and what is emerging now that we're, here at the start of spring, what's emerging from the earth and how that fresh growth and the different plants are not just potentially food, but also medicine to build our immune systems and connect us to the earth in that way. Really, that's a pretty confidence boosting thing, right? And it is a source of relief and appreciation, right? The other thing that occurred to me was that resilience, like thinking about stories from the past or things that have happened. The other thing, and I think this is something that everyone has to draw on, is that there are tough things that we have lived through. Everybody has fought and won battles, right? And it was tough, but we did it. And I think that kind of experience really can support us now in helping underscore how resilient we can be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, being mentally resilient.
Exactly.
That's certainly the most important thing. Truth be told, there's still a huge cushion around us. We can order groceries. Don't have to talk to someone, barely have to look at someone. They'll leave them on your doorstep. The water still comes pumping in from the city. So is natural gas. My house is still warm. There's a lot of stuff that's still right in the world. It's still easy.
Yes.
So spending time with my family for these weeks or months or whatever it's going to be, that might be the hardest thing.
So time to practice gratitude and appreciation, and asking for what you want and asking for what you need, and compromising. Yeah. Yeah. It is an opportunity for those skill building things.
That's right.
Yeah. So we prepared a little bit of a slideshow or just ramble and talk about some different things. We were talking about sort of the fear-based thinking and approach that we're seeing exhibited around us.
Yeah.
And the hoarding, the brothers who bought 8,000 bottles of hand sanitizer to price gouge on Amazon and then got shut off, right?
Yeah.
And how people can take advantage of others or get into fear-based thinking and then really open themselves up to negativity and irrational behavior, right?
Yeah, destructive behavior. The thing that when I was thinking about this part of things, how it really goes against permaculture, how it does not meet the test of the ethics to be doing this. And on the other side of it, you say you have a year's worth of food and some guns, you run out of food. Well, what's going to be your first instinct? You're going to go take what you need.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we need.
No, that kind of violent behavior is circular and destructive in its feedback loop.
That's right.
Absolutely. And you say it doesn't meet the ethics. So how do you work that out just for people?
Care of earth, care of people, care of the future. So care of the earth, we're a little past that. In some ways it's neglected. Having this surplus of food and then having no way to connect to the world around you and get more food, which in my mind would be gardening. Some sort of, you're going to have to interact with nature. So you're missing out there. You're not taking care of the people around you. I mean, you might be taking care of your family, but how many neighbors do you have around you? And then really, where does that leave you in the future? You know, like I said, you run out of a year's worth of food. What are you going to do next?
Mm-hmm.
If you have to use all that food up, you're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's filling your life with stuff in a different way, in this kind of hoarding way, when what we need to do is to interact with the world and to be a part of it. And that might include some social distancing. That's fine. We can manage. I'm still planning a farming operation with someone, and we're going to maybe work at different times. And when we have to work together, we're just not going to like hug and kiss. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But if you just hunkered down and stopped farming, then where would food that people need come from?
Right. That's off on someone else.
Right. So part of permaculture is taking responsibility. That means doing your part, right? However you do that, whether you're growing for yourself or growing food or supplies or offering skills, is that you have a piece that no one else has and you're needed.
And there can be risks. Risks are part of life, you know, and to completely avoid risks is really to push it off. That risk that you can't get rid of it completely. You're pushing it off on someone else, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So I agree that the sort of hoarding, prepping mentality of I'll get mine and I'll take what I need, that's, you know, in a confrontational way, that's not meeting our ethical standards, right? At the same time, I would say that there is a reasonable amount of preparedness that people need to have.
Absolutely.
It is completely reasonable to have several days worth of food, and we're going to talk about that, I know, here in a minute. But there is a certain amount of stuff that it is just common sense preparedness, I would say, to have. And in this case, you know, if you are sick or going to be sick for 2 to 4 weeks, maybe having a good backup supply of food that could take care of you and your family for a month is reasonable, right?
Totally.
And so
even if you think about it in terms of the patterns of nature, stack up for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
You play down that resource over until the abundance is here again. And, you know, this is for us in the temperate climates. And then you stock back up.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the pattern.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that pattern.
Right. I don't know. I think about guns and I think about, we're going to talk about community, but I think about boundaries and just, but also connection, you know?
Yeah.
So permaculture design, we talked about the ethics, and So we're really about, we want to acknowledge and analyze information. That's just a good part of systems design. But what we're looking for is feedback, right? We are part now, and always actually have been part of a global system. This illness is feedback in some ways. And, there's inputs and outputs in any system, and there are dynamics. And so we want to look at the feedback that we're getting, the information that we have. We want to make appropriate adjustments to our own personal systems and to the communities that we live in. And I do see many people doing that in terms of social distancing. We have information. It's recommended that we do some social distancing. We're taking that feedback and we're applying it, right?
Right.
And an important piece of this is understanding that by taking responsibility, by taking the information we have, by making informed choices and changing our behaviors and sort of the design of our lives appropriately, we have the opportunity to both be leaders and followers, right? So I'm following the guidance of people who have more information and are better able to do analysis than I am on the social distancing. I'm keeping my son home from in-person piano lessons at the university. They've mostly been shut down, but we're going to do them online. So I'm a follower there. I'm following that guideline appropriately. So we need to know how to both be leaders and followers. And the follower part of it is asking good questions, taking the information appropriately, making good choices. The leadership part of it is speaking up if we need to, paying attention to things, not endlessly consuming information, but paying attention and developing our capacities so that we can offer support to our communities. And there are feedback loops and adjustments to be made because the whole thing is emergent.
Yeah, opportunities coming. Like, I've been very interested in the mutual aid network, mutual aid disaster relief. And so, just 2 days ago, I got a very interesting email just about, what's going on and what's needed in the community. People are looking to document some of the things that are happening, the good and the bad, and to share information and to share physical aid with those that really need it.
Yeah. I have been so pleased to see how positive things are really emerging. Like in my own community, the farmers market, one of the biggest in the country, is shut down, but the farmers are creating CSAs and they're like, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it fairly. We're going to rotate vendors. We're going to rotate pickup, and we're going to keep everybody safe. But we're still going to be providing food, which supports the farmers and their capacity to keep growing food, and people getting nutritious food. And built into that process in the sign-up form is, hey, we're going to limit how much food you can access so that people aren't hoarding, for example. And at the same time, if there are people who need food, you let us know. And if you can pay for someone to get a box this week, can you do that? Support that. So everybody is getting their needs met along the way. So they're already building systems that anticipate further challenge and crisis and impacts to the system overall.
Yeah.
There's a lot of localized mutual aid support happening. And, I'm just seeing all kinds of things happen. I'm seeing a lot of people responding and keeping in mind the impact on small businesses, on homeless people, on restaurants. They just closed restaurants.
Yeah.
Except for pickup and delivery. So if that's part of the business model, those are open.
My state has also closed restaurants.
But at the same time, finding ways to keep supporting, especially local businesses, because those are the people in your community directly affected by the things that they produce, right? So
yeah, we're in the midst of the first order impact of all this, that, essentially self-quarantining and that sort of thing. But give it a month, give it 2 months, and we're going to really see how this impacts people's ability to pay their bills. We're going to see businesses close, and that's going to create a whole lot of new problems.
Yeah, and opportunities.
Yes. And we need to be on the lookout for those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And be ready to act.
Yes, absolutely. And adapt, just adapt things. So part of what we're doing is using our time, like thinking, oh, instead of all the commuting time and driving people around now, like I really do have more time to practice skills and put time and energy into things that I was doing while supporting my family in travel, right?
Well, and self-care.
And self-care, yes.
Skills and self-care.
Yeah. So I have more time to garden, and grow food, start seeds, propagate plants, make nutritious food.
Yeah, that's going to be important right now.
Mm-hmm. Do a little impromptu medicine making here and there, and also start to restock supplies as we go through the season.
Mm-hmm. Exercise.
Yeah.
Taking care of our bodies and maybe ways that they were neglected.
Yes. Sleeping well.
Yes. If we can get to sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's all kinds of things to do that, right? Like there are practices that help us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Winding up on the latest headlines and coronavirus stuff is not going to help you. Not going to help you sleep. Yeah. No. I mean, I've done that a couple times. And it's like, that's not helpful. And
it's pretty obvious. Yeah. That is not helpful when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing is like stress, right?
Yeah.
To me, this is like, I have seen the impact of stress on my own life and on the lives of other people I know, and I know how damaging it is. And here is an opportunity for all of us to take a deep breath and really start to learn how to manage our stress and also reach out and build connections and build relationships.
Even strengthens the ones that we have.
Yeah.
It's definitely making me look at my family and just tell them, I love them every day.
Yeah. And people who have inspired us, who, maybe people we haven't reached out to in years. I just did that today. Somebody that I really admire, an older couple, he was like, hey, like, let us know, like, whether it's us or someone else, like, let people know how you feel about them. Because you just don't know if someone that you love and care about or admire is older, or maybe they're just struggling and you haven't reached out to them. It's going to be appreciated what you say.
Yeah, it can make a difference.
Yeah, so that community of belonging that we all are a part of, and practicing self-care, knowing what our limits are, charging up who we are. I was just listening to, and I can put a link to another podcast. It was just talking about like, how do you live it's the Good Life Project. And I was listening to one of the podcasts, and they were just talking about checking in on 3 buckets that they've decided are key to a good life. And they were vitality, connection, and contribution. And I look at those as opportunities to judge, every day, but especially these days. How's my vitality? How's my health? How's my sense of connection to myself and to others? And am I contributing in a way that brings something positive and useful to the world? And am I getting feedback that is received well?
This has been an opportunity to think about, for me, what is it to merely survive? And is that a way to live? And so how do we go beyond that? I don't want to just merely survive. I really want to blossom my connections with my family, with my friends, with my community, to have a better quality of life. And this is an opportunity to do that, and to think about the ways that we can do that.
So a little exercise. If you envision, let's just say 3 months from now,
Yeah.
mid to late June this year, what would you like to see change about your life and in those opportunities?
Yeah. I'd like to see a lot more interaction with my neighbors. I think, suburban life, you tend to be disconnected from those right around you. And I think this could be an opportunity to check in on your next door neighbor and see how they're doing, see if they're okay. Gosh, what else?
Yeah, no, I've thought about definitely writing my neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and just a little love letter like, hey, I'm here. I've got the crazy yard with stuff going on. We're totally harmless and funky family. Like, would love to see people use the little library, for example, or like a little more like they did last year. It went off during the cold season, but I'd love to see you walking around the neighborhood. If there's something that you need, or you're having a hard time going someplace, feel free to put a note in the box, like,
Yeah.
or how can we support each other? Here's my email me. But yeah, I agree. I like, building those relationships with the neighbors right around us. Right. And hey, I'm growing food. I know how to do it. Do you want starts? Right.
Yeah. Or even more in line with the way things are now. Hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you need anything? Can I get something for you?
Mm-hmm.
Why should we expose everyone to that risk? Let's have one person and go shop for the neighborhood, right? Or shop for the group of houses.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, those relationships with the neighbors, I would like to see. I have gardened and I've had sort of minimal production. I'd like to have more intensive production in my garden this year. That was an intention before this emerged more. I would like to be increasing the number of primitive skills and foraging forays I do, because I would just like to be spending more time in the woods this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that really nurtures me. And the artistic pieces of that for me, the inspiration I get from doing that, and spiritual connection that I have out in nature. It's all nature. Like, I always feel awkward about that phrase. Like, we talk about reconnecting with nature, but there's a difference between being in your house and being in the forest, for sure. That's real.
Yeah. Constructed nature. Yeah, our houses are very much something that we've built for ourselves. They're kind of artificial environments. Even the walls of our domestication, if you will. I'd like to see less reliance on travel, people entertaining themselves, sourcing their needs more from around themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we don't take advantage of.
Right.
There's a lot around us that people don't even know about.
Absolutely. And I think that there's also just really practical skills and things that we can be practicing and then sharing. Like, now is a great time to be making a lot of mistakes, because you're right, there's so much resilience still in so many of our systems. So practicing understanding the systems, like understanding, where does the municipal water supply come from? What are the vulnerabilities of that? And how do I provide basic needs for myself? If I didn't have access to natural gas, how could I cook or eat my food, right? Like, or heat my house?
Mm-hmm.
There are alternatives. Could I have a backup? The growing food and saving seed. I mean, there's so many skills. Grafting trees. We're heading into all that season.
You're working with animals.
Yeah. And understanding what they need, how to keep them healthy.
Right.
We talked a little bit about medicine making, but also just like basic first aid skills. Like, how do you respond? How do you take care of a person? What do they need in order to feel comfortable when they're in crisis?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's more than just putting the Band-Aid on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, going to the doctor. So that's kind of out of the question right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, do I have the skills to provide basic care for my family or my neighbor if they can't get to a doctor?
Yeah.
So just working on those things and then taking advantage of the opportunity. There's so much possibility there.
Yeah. And there's so much around us that we are not taking advantage of to meet our needs and to connect with those things around us in a way that makes us more sensitive to their degradation, which is isn't that kind of part of the problem, that we're not really here. We're not really connected to our neighbors. We're not really connected to the resources around us, to the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what is the water quality of the water sources closest to your neighborhood?
Yeah, not great.
Yeah. So I see so much possibility for people to embrace, like I said, take a long, deep breath, pause, and really suss out what really matters. We have been spun up, spun around, flipped upside down, turned every which way blinded by mainstream society.
Yeah.
I say mainstream. I don't know how you want to phrase that, but the economy is totally the stock market. It's not. The
right.
world will end if celebrities have to pause their celebrity life.
Tom Hanks is infected with COVID-19. It's the end of the world.
End of the world, right? It's not the end of his world. It's not the end of the world, right? It's okay.
Right.
And so many people, so many permaculture leaders, so many other people have asked, like, what if, we were talking about Rob Hopkins' book, What If?
Yeah.
And people are asking that question, like, what if we took this moment to really evaluate the situation and identify what is really important to us. Also, when we take those moments, we might look at some things and see ourselves in the mirror in a way that we don't necessarily like. So we might have to make some changes, but really take the moment and do a really thorough assessment. Look at what is possible and dream of new things that are possible that weren't possible 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been in the rat race with so many pressures. And that is totally in question right now, I think.
Yeah, our lives are flashing before our eyes, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think it's an opportunity for abundance in things that really do make a difference in our lives. In this, like you were saying, connection to your family and laughing. Like we have played so many games. We learned how to play poker. Not because like we're really into it, but it just gives us an opportunity to do something different, right? And
yeah.
And our kids beat us every time, usually. But we just laugh, or we listen to music together, or we share funny stories. So just having that opportunity to transform our lives and pare down to what is really essential, what is really important in life.
Yeah.
And also taking the opportunity to take care of the earth and live lighter, have less of an impact.
That's what our lives depend on.
Yeah. It's just occurring to me like, oh, maybe air quality will improve. That would be interesting.
I think there's less airplanes in the sky if you go outside.
Well, it's been cloudy and everything here, so I haven't really been looking, but so sparking up curiosity, making good choices for ourselves, evaluating what is really important to me. How do I want to move forward from here? How do I get what I need in life? Not so much everything I want. And how do I keep my mind and heart open through self-care and seeking my own wisdom based on experience in a way that allows me to keep my sensitivity to what's happening and what could happen again. This may not be the only pandemic we face in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
So how can we learn from this in the moment in a way that keeps our resilience in place?